and welcome back to a new video. If you're new here, my name is Rachel and hi, welcome to my channel. I'm trying out a new lipstick today. I don't know if I like it, so please bear with me through this. A little bit of a shorter video today, but a serious one, because I have no idea if this is even going to get monetized or seen by anyone. YouTube has been suppressing a lot of videos on this kind of content recently, especially for me and my channel, but I feel like I literally cannot open YouTube or Reddit, or they're basically the only social media platforms I use other than Instagram, but I can't really open them at the minute without seeing yet another content creator or celebrity or public figure being exposed for inappropriate behaviour with children, and I'm kind of sick of it. Now, please don't get me wrong, I'm not upset about the people coming forward. We absolutely should be encouraging that. That is brilliant to see that they feel brave enough, they feel confident enough, that they feel safe enough to come forward. That is absolutely fantastic. We absolutely should be encouraging and offering our support and love to those victims who are strong enough to speak out about it, and of course those who aren't strong enough as well. I think it goes without saying that it is better for this information to be out there and for us all to know what these predators are really like, to know who we need to protect young people from. The issue I have is that it's so disheartening to see it absolutely everywhere and just sit here wondering how so many people can be that sick. Even Kubi's grumbling in the background, bless her. One of the things I found myself asking recently is, why are there so many predators around, particularly on YouTube, on social media, taking these roles and jobs as influencers and content creators, or, figures in the public eye? These are jobs where you do have power and influence over a number of people, and I guess it's kind of got me asking, are predators attracted to this role, or is there something about this role that, I don't want to say turns people into predators, that's the wrong word, but maybe makes it easier for them to be in contact with their victims? Recently, and I've made a video about this, we found out that Cody Ko started talking to Tana Mongeau when she was 16, slept with her when she was just 17, and he was 25 years old. And it also seems now, from a number of other allegations and bits of evidence that people have found, it seems he actually slept with a number of 17-year-olds and other teenagers when he was in his 20s. I've been seeing stuff everywhere about some guy called Dr. Disrespect, who I hadn't heard of until all of this, but apparently he was having inappropriate conversations with minors, including one where he was planning to meet up with them. That was bad enough for Twitch to ban him completely 4 years ago, but it's only just come out now. In the UK recently, we had one of our most respected and well-liked news reporters, Hugh Edwards. He was exposed for messaging a young person and creating indecent images of children. So Hugh Edwards was literally the man who was trusted with reporting the Queen's death here in the UK. He was a pretty big deal. He did all the big major news events, and honestly, he always seemed so professional and sweet and lovely on camera, and I remember me and Alizé talking when the Queen died, and we were like, oh, they couldn't have really got anyone better, could they? He's doing such a good job, bless him. And we were like, loving Hugh Edwards. And then, a year later, all this comes out, and it started a year ago. He was exposed for having inappropriate conversations with a 17-year-old and asking and paying for them to send him sexual images. And then there's also been a separate report of him messaging another 17-year-old, but that's yet to be proven. On the first case, though, just this week, he has finally been charged with having 6 Category A images of children, 12 Category B images, and 19 Category C photographs. And he's been charged with both possessing and making them because he asked his child to do that. And I won't go into detail about what these categories mean because YouTube doesn't allow that, but you can Google it and see that this is way more serious than even we first thought when it was first reported on, I remember through it all, when it first came out, his wife blamed it on mental health issues, and yeah, mental health issues are serious. I've had my own fair share of them, but it didn't make me go out and abuse a child. There's just no excuse for it. In other places, we've seen rapper and absolute not poet Drake being accused of being super inappropriate with various famous children and teenagers over the years, including a model that he apparently met when she was 14 or something, and then he started dating as soon as she turned 18. There's the inappropriate messages about dating and relationships and sex with Millie Bobby Brown, I think it is, when she was still a kid. Tons of stories of stuff like that. And it's not just the men either, women too. So Taylor Swift creepily dated just 17-year-old Harry Styles when she was 24. She dated 17-year-old and still in school Connor Kennedy when she was 22/23, despite having just dated his cousin and Connor's parent literally having just died. And then throughout all this, she like love bombed him and rushed it all so much that she bought a house across the road from him, from her 17-year-old still in school boyfriend. And then there's the also creepy, but I guess maybe not quite as bad for some people, relatively, her dating Taylor Lautner when he was 17 and she was 20. So there's a concerning pattern of behaviour there of her being a woman in her 20s, working, doing all this stuff, and dating underage teenagers. No one seems to want to talk about that, but I find it concerning. And while we're still talking about women, recently we've seen Ava Tyson, who used to work with Mr. Beast. Apparently she has groomed and had inappropriate conversations with a kid in his early teens when she was in her 20s. And there's also allegations that she's into art which sexualizes kids. That's not something I'm too familiar with because I don't really like Mr. Beast. I've never watched his videos much. He seems like a bit of a misogynist underneath, you know, so I've avoided him. But yeah, she's someone he worked with. Oh, that's the dishwasher, sorry. Back to YouTube though, again we've had plenty of other situations over the years. The Onision situation, mini lad, Austin Jones, he actually went to prison. Lily Orchard, James Charles, Shane Dawson, Colleen Ballinger, SS Sniper Wolf, Chris Ingham. Honestly, there's so many I couldn't even remember them all. I couldn't even find like a definitive list of YouTube predators when I was researching this because there's just so many of them and there's so many more allegations coming out literally all the time. I feel like in the comments you guys can probably remind me of like 10, 20, 30 other cases, right? And I feel like as I'm getting older, I'm reevaluating my own experiences that I had when I was young at that age and being like, damn, you know what, people were inappropriate with me too. This isn't just like a celebrity thing. This is a random men you meet in a pub thing. They do it too. Come on, washing machine, dishwasher, whichever you are. Having a serious conversation here. Sorry. But not only that, I feel like now as I'm getting older as well, I'm seeing it happen to other people, again in real life, and it's really, really upsetting. So I was at Tramlines this weekend, which is like this small little music festival in Sheffield, and yeah, it was pretty fun. I had a good time. I was there by myself. Really enjoyed the music. There were some great bands. Loved seeing The View, loved seeing Sophie Ellis-Bextor, loved seeing The Snuts. I found this great new band that I'd not heard of before from Sheffield called Mind's Idol. They're small, but they're great. Loved them. But one of the things that really upset me was seeing how adults there behaved towards children. So if you were under 16, you had to be accompanied by an adult, but there were groups of teenagers between like 16 and 18 who were just hanging out as groups of friends, as you do at that age, right? And on one occasion, we were in the middle of a really, really big crowd, like couldn't move kind of crowd, and there was music playing, obviously, and there were no security around for ages, and I saw these grown adult men who looked about my age in their 30s, like, trying to grind on these girls that looked maybe 16 to 18. They looked so young, and I was just like, God, there's no security around, so I didn't want to say anything because I was scared, so I just pretended to be, like, an obnoxious person in the crowd, and I pushed my way through, and I just like stood between them, and I didn't say anything. I just stood there as though I'd been like looking for a space, and then just like, you know, kept having my drink and just danced along, and I just stood between them, and I'm like, you're not getting them, you're not touching these kids, and I just stood there the whole time, and eventually the men stopped trying, and you know, they couldn't get past me and whatever. But then there was another occasion where it was in a slightly smaller area. It was when I was dancing to a DJ set, and again, there were these boys, these children, and they looked so young. They had like little baby faces, and they couldn't have been older than 16. Like, I really don't think they were. And these 40-odd-year-old women, like, very visibly decades older than me, they came over and they started talking to the boys. I was like, oh, sweet, probably like a friend of one of their mums or something. But then they started like grabbing the boys' hands and trying to make the boys dance with them. And then they started trying to take selfies with the boys, and the boys were like literally pushing them off, going, no, 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 leave us alone. And then out of nowhere, the women turned the cameras around and started just filming the boys dancing, and they were just like oh, it was so creepy. And I was at that point like looking around, and there was more space to move, so I was like, I need to find security. So I started like darting around trying to find security, couldn't find anyone. But then the boys, like, they just had enough and they were like, we're leaving now. And I was like, oh, thank God they're getting away. But then the women followed them, and I lost everyone in the crowd. And I was very upset about that, and I was scared for the boys, and I didn't know what to do. So I ended up just leaving and going home early that night because I was really upset by it. And yeah, I nearly had a little cry to my sister on the way home, like, over the phone. I was like sending these voice notes, I was like tearing up, and it just... It brought back a lot of stuff that happened to me at that age, and it's horrible to see other people in that situation and knowing that, like, you know, there were no security around, and I'm a small woman on my own, like, and these women were a lot bigger than me, and same with the men going after the girls. Like, it felt a little easier then because it was the middle of the day and it was daylight, as opposed to with the boys when it was nighttime. So with the girls, I felt a bit safer just standing between them, but I still felt too scared to say anything, and it's heartbreaking seeing it keep happening. Those experiences at tramlines, plus everything happening online at the minute, is what's got me thinking about all of this and needing to kind of talk about it, because why are there so many predators on YouTube? Why are there so many predators who are famous? Is it because a certain type of person is more attracted to those jobs? Or is it because when you're in those jobs, you just have easier access to vulnerable potential victims? So people who might have only thought about it before can actually do it now, can actually act on these impulses. Is it that there's actually the same, I guess, like, percentage of predators in the normal population versus, like, you know, YouTube world, for example? But because these people are more high profile, we're more aware of it. Is that it? I don't know. I do think there are a few variables we need to think about, though, and bring into this discussion. And I think we need to start talking about what we can do to protect these kids and young people more. Like, not only on an individual level. So I'm not saying all of you have to go out there and, you know, get in a crowd and stand between a creepy older man and a girl. Like, you don't have to do that, because that was scary enough for me, and I don't want anyone else putting themselves in danger. But I guess on a bigger, more systemic level, is there anything we can do? So one of the big problems I find with platforms like YouTube, or having any big social media following in general, is that unlike any other job, absolutely anyone can do it and get big, and there's no vetting process. And what comes with that is that now absolutely anyone has access to message and leverage power over child fans like never before. And this has always been a problem to some extent, but now it's just happening on a way bigger scale. So we absolutely did see this in the past. The amount of musicians in the 60s, 70s, 80s who literally had child groupies and who slept with and sometimes married literal children of like 14, 15, it's disgusting, and it was happening, and it was sadly very normal at the time and kind of just known, you know? So that sort of thing is still happening now, just on a way bigger scale, because instead of a predatory famous person, you know, performing at a concert and having access to 10 girls you can take a pic from, like on a Friday night, now they have access to millions of kids at their fingertips at any time. And honestly, I find that kind of terrifying. Like, surely we need to be doing a better job of protecting kids online and monitoring who they can talk to and when and why and what those conversations are. Surely we should be restricting or monitoring, or at least, you know, have some sort of vetting process for who can talk to kids or create content for kids, you know? And parents need to be more aware of this stuff than ever and actually talk to their kids about it. I don't specifically know how to do that, that's above my pay grade and skill level and knowledge, but clearly something needs to change, right? And it'll only change if we start having these conversations about it and start suggesting ways to improve it. Realistically, we can't just ban kids from everything ever and hope that by putting them in a box we're going to keep them safe, because it's important that kids still have access to a range of materials online, and, you know, they can learn about things and figure out who they are, and they can meet other people their own age, or even learn from people slightly older than them in a kind of mentorship kind of way. So we can't just put them in a box and lock them away. We need to find this happy medium. I do think better education for kids in general is important too, and sadly that can't just be left up to the parents, because we all know that not every parent is a good parent or an educated one. We can't just say, oh, that's up to the parents, and then if a kid has bad parents, well, screw them, they're on their own. That's where I think a more general education system needs to be brought in to help. So, of course, YouTube videos can help, but problems arise there because, one, when you have videos like this one here, like, and I'm talking about this stuff, I'm trying to educate people, that's fine, but I don't really have a teenage audience. This, I guess, is aimed more at educating parents and grandparents and aunties and uncles and family members who can speak to those kids themselves, you know? So, again, this still relies on people having a good supportive family there. And two, let's say someone did make an educational YouTube video like this, but actually aimed at teenagers and talking directly to teenagers. Again, we have to ask, who is evaluating that content to make sure it really is appropriate for those teenagers? And who is checking that the person who is making that content is actually safe and suitable to be talking to kids? So another suggestion could be, how about we start pushing to have this discussed in schools and educational materials for kids a little bit more in general. So I know when I was a kid we had lots of talks in school about, stranger danger and don't take drugs and all that sort of thing. But now maybe there needs to be more of a focus and a push, instead of just stranger danger, talking about what that means in the context of online celebrities and influencers, Sometimes kids form these parasocial relationships and feel like they know this big influencer when they don't, but that level of trust that they have in them can lead to them being taken advantage of. How about more media covering this too? So I've been writing another video script recently, and I'm not sure what order these videos are going out in, so I'm not sure if you'll have seen that one yet, but in that other video script, it's reviewing It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. I talk about the writing of Jacqueline Wilson, whose books I absolutely adored as a kid, and she had such a great way of tackling topics which do affect kids regularly, child abuse, witnessing domestic violence, living with a disability, eating disorders, all sorts of stuff like that, which is dark, but really important for kids to learn about. Her books really helped me and so many other kids in my generation deal with all these difficult things that were going on in our lives, and maybe we need more content like that being made, but with a focus on these more modern issues like the power imbalance in relationships with online influencers and celebrities and that sort of thing. Maybe we need more educational materials for kids like that, talking about power imbalances in general. I don't know. I mean, I say that, but even Jacqueline Wilson had issues with that in her own books. So I remember a few years back, I read one of her newer books. So this is a book that came out while I was an adult, and I read it while I was an adult. And I thought, oh, this is an interesting topic. Maybe I can reference it in a video, so I'll read it, I'll bring it up. And I was actually really disappointed with it. I think it's one of her few misses, but a miss nonetheless. So it was called Love Lessons, and it was about this sheltered kid being groomed by her teacher, but I didn't feel like it was handled well, and the ending in particular, it felt like the teacher just sort of got away with it, and then the kid, she was the one who was punished and sent away, and it just, yeah. Her other books that I've reread really hold up and they do some great stuff, but that one was a bit of a disappointment for me. So again, even if we have someone creating these educational materials for kids and teenagers, who do we have checking that it's appropriate and it's not accidentally sending the wrong message, even if the intentions are good? It just, it's so difficult, isn't it? Another big thing is that I think us adults also really, really need to be better educated on what things like grooming actually are and how do we spot the warning signs. I've had so many people in various videos where I've spoken about grooming and stuff. People have said, well, how can it be grooming? They're an adult, or how can it be grooming? There's this, and how can... Grooming is far more complicated than that, and it's not just children who can be groomed, but adults as well, especially those in vulnerable positions or positions of subordinance over someone. It's just, yeah, I talk about that in another video that should be out soon in my Zodiac Academy Book 3 one, so keep an eye out for that as well. Point is, there's still lots that us adults don't know, and we need to be continually educating ourselves too in order to help others. As for the question of whether more YouTubers rather than other people are predators, I don't know. It's impossible to say. I don't personally have a huge amount of YouTuber friends, and the ones I do have are just as disgusted with these situations. But I think there is maybe some insight we can get from looking at the type of person who does become a YouTuber and their reasons for it, Not all YouTubers, of course, but I think for a lot of us, we fell into doing YouTube because we are kind of introverted and awkward, and we maybe don't have the best social skills, and we don't necessarily know how to act with other people very well. And I mean, I know for me, one of the reasons I love this job is because I can do it from home at my own pace. I don't actually need to leave the house every day. I don't need to speak to other humans every day, and that suits me perfectly. But for me, one of the big things I struggled with when I started to get big on YouTube was that I'd never really had many friends my whole life. So I definitely didn't, as a teenager in school, there was like no one I really felt was a proper friend who I trusted and felt comfortable with. And then as I got a bit older, I did start to have like a smaller friend group. And then at uni again, I had like a nice small friend group. And then after I graduated, it dwindled down again. So I went from having like maybe 3 to 5 people in my life who I felt could maybe be friends to all of a sudden 100,000 people watching me and wanting to talk to me and interact with me and hear what I had to say. And that is difficult to navigate for anyone, never mind someone who doesn't really have any social experience with interacting with people. Does that make sense? I know it sounds stupid. Well, it might sound stupid to some of you who don't know what that's like, but it's terrifying. And yeah, you absolutely do mess up at times and don't know how to say things in the right way. You don't understand what people mean. You don't always know, like, what's a socially acceptable thing to do or say because you've just never had to experience it before, right? My point here is, I would say to offer some people the benefit of the doubt maybe, I can understand if you're very socially awkward and then you suddenly have people wanting to talk to you. For me, that's eventually led to me being overwhelmed and shutting down and being like, I'm just not really going to talk to anyone much at all. No. But for other people, they might go the other way or suddenly be like, oh my god, I'm having all this attention that I've never had before. Let me just grab it all at once and talk to everyone and anyone about absolutely anything without boundaries. So I can understand why the kind of awkwardness and the naivety and ignorance might lead to people overstepping boundaries with fans, but that's more of like a, I understand it, but I don't excuse it, you know? There's still never an excuse for crossing those boundaries and being inappropriate, especially when it comes to children. Like, that's just inexcusable. One of the things that crossed my mind in relation to this is that, and this is something that could be really small but may or may not have an impact, I don't know, but one of the things that YouTube has started doing with its content creators is offering us some, not very many and not very good, but some educational resources. So things like, you know, this is how thumbnails work, these are community guidelines, which we don't actually enforce, and you know, teaching us kind of stuff like that. And it might be useful to have something for channels of maybe a certain size or a certain age or a certain number of views to, you know, maybe just have us watch like a 5 to 10 minute video and then answer some questions afterwards, teaching us like how to responsibly interact with fans and audience members. I think that could be really, really useful for a lot of people. It might not be too much, but it would definitely remove the stupid and naive excuse that some people use. I mean, if you combine something like that with YouTube just finally doing the bare minimum and bothering to actually enforce community guidelines and them stopping trying to cover for and suppress content on predatory creators like Cody Co and I'm Alex, if YouTube actually did something, then we might get somewhere. I think if we also had some sort of like reporting system on social media sites too, that could be great. You know, ones where the reports were actually taken seriously and looked at. Looking at you again, YouTube. You know, somewhere that kids could be like, hey, this is how this user's been interacting with me on various platforms, here are some screenshots, blah, 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 please help. You know, something like that would be great. You know, so you have these young people who can tell sites like YouTube, this user's been inappropriate with me, they are taking advantage of their audience. And you know, if YouTube or the other social media sites, but mostly YouTube, if they actually listen to that, that would be really great. But I don't know, these are just some thoughts I have on the topic. They are, oh god, I feel like I barely even scratched the surface. There's a lot more we can say, a lot more we could say, maybe a lot more we should say, but for now I want to pass this conversation over to you guys and you can let me know your thoughts. But for now, thank you for watching. I hope people can actually see this video and that it doesn't get suppressed by demonetization and not being shown to people, because, you know, it seems likely, doesn't it? But yeah, point is, thank you for watching. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you again soon.